So I want to put the video down below of David Farina and Dr. James Torr debating together. And I guess it's at James Torr's university where he's a professor. And they allowed some guests to come in and basically not talk science, which is what James Torr was talking about. He was talking about science and he stuck to it. Whereas David acted like a living, breathing, walking ego and decided to come after Torr because he had nothing else to go on, and Torr showed that he could move very smoothly in and out of not only the formulas that were created in his field of study, but he could expound upon it and he could teach it. Because I could follow some of what he was saying a little bit. I know nothing about what's going on with their discussion, but I do know the focus, and that is James is making it clear that he doesn't believe in the God of the gap. Even though he's a believer, he's a Jewish person who became a believer of Jesus Christ. In my opinion, I believe that he's still Jewish, He just believes in Jesus. This is my opinion. And so his thing is there's something so complex happening with the beginning of life that it couldn't have been an accident, because there's a leap of faith that has to happen for you to believe that it was just a soup that kind of appeared and then we came from that strange soup. That takes faith. And even though that wasn't the whole center of the debate was about bashing Torr and about, I should say, Dr. Torr, which I think there's something really strange about, it's almost supernatural, which is my opinion, this is what I'm talking about here, is there's something supernatural about a university allowing their professor to be bashed as harshly as he was, to have a moderator who allowed for the living, breathing ego that is David, whatever his name is, to have an opening. He opened his debate with a 10-minute bashing of Torr. It wasn't science. He brought no science to the table. If I were the moderator, I would have stopped him halfway through that introduction and said, okay, what you're coming to the table with is not science. You're coming to the table with hearsay, he said, she said, and then he had all his friends and their pictures up on the wall and about all these email conversations that Torr had with them that was weird according to them. So he came there as opposition. And even the way the audience acted, the way the moderator didn't fix the situation and say, okay, what we have here is not a debate. This isn't about science. We're not even addressing the issue here. And Torr could write on the chalkboard. He could write on the chalkboard really complex formulas, compounds. And he's saying, maybe like a math formula, which is what I'm gathering, okay, add those to this. Add what you're saying to this and create what we're talking about. Create what you say could happen here. Create the compound, the new one. And the guy couldn't. He couldn't add to anything. All he could do was say the titles of articles, and that's all he had. Outside of the fact that this dude, the living, breathing ego that is David, whatever his last name is, what you got to come to somebody's university, a professor who has doctor at the front of their name, and bash them on their grounds in front of their students. And the university let him do it. What happened here was science has decided, and even in the conversation, he's like, oh, Dr. James Torr, you're calling this person a liar, that scientist a liar, because it wasn't about, this is what I'm noticing about science. It's not about what's being debated. It's about the egos which created the debate, right? So they put these things in a laboratory. They came up with a conclusion, and you're stupid if you call them an idiot, and you're dumb because you don't agree, which is why I think that people like James Torr are put in a corner. They're disciplined and they're hazed, and you're going to stay in line if you're made an example of, like Torr, because Torr's really smart. He has a really amazing career history. He's done a lot of great things for science, but they put him in a corner because they're saying to him, we don't like that you love God. We don't like that you are a Jewish person who came to know Jesus, that you're religious. So we're going to make a point to make an example of you. So you're not going to be peer reviewed. You're not going to be published. And then that's their go-to. It's a circular reasoning. Now it's like, well, nobody likes you, and it's not because we don't like that you don't like us, you don't agree with us. We just, want to make sure whatever ideas you have that combat us, which are a bunch of egos clearly, are going to stay, we're going to keep you silent. We're going to keep you in a corner. And because you're in a corner, people are going to go, oh, well, what's wrong with you? Why are you in a corner? They kind of create that issue, and then they go, oh, but why are you that way? Like beating a dog and then being like, well, I'm not saying James towards a dog. I'm just saying, like, it's just a natural cycle that occurs. And like, oh, this dog is so shy, and, it must be violent. It's doing something wrong, right, because you keep beating it every time it gets out of line. And I'm not saying he's this, but I'm saying that it's just a natural reaction to how somebody gets put in a place in this world where now they're all pointing to the fact that he's not in certain articles or in certain publications. But if you listen really closely to that debate, and the fact the university let it go down, and the fact the moderator didn't correct the ego that was in the room, and it wasn't James Tord, James just kept going back to the science, and you realize there's something dishonest happening here, and everybody's in on it. And James is the only one who, he yells because he feels passionately and because he's not heard. And everybody goes, oh my gosh, why is he yelling? Because you're not listening. That's why. And because you let somebody into his university treat him like this, that James actually invited, but I didn't think he was going to act like that. I'm sure James didn't think so either. It was a horrible debate. Not a whole lot got done. I think James got very defensive. Dr. James got very defensive. And the fact that you could call somebody stupid, an idiot, and a liar to their face when they have doctor in front of their name on their grounds and not be called out for it by the students themselves, I don't know, it just really, really upset me, because let's say, for argument's sake, James was wrong. It doesn't justify it. And it's low-hanging fruit. And it's rude. And not just for being rude for any sake, but it felt very intentional, and like the science community was coming for him, and they're putting it and cementing it somewhere that we don't like you, shut up, we think you're wrong, because I do think there are holes being poked in their arguments, and they're saying we are gods. And James is like, there's this professor in this laboratory who claimed that he was going to create life in 2 years. He didn't, and we never will create life in a laboratory in 2 years. Basically, they take living organisms and they multiply it, and they're like, oh, we've created life. And James is like, guess what? I have news for you. You're not God. I know you think you're a god, but you're not. And I really thought this was just my imagination. I thought there's no way scientists think themselves gods. They do. This debate, if you want to watch it, proves scientists are not about, or at least in this field, don't seem to be out for the truth. They seem out for their own reputation. They're out for proving themselves to be right and to be gods, not having a real debate, not being able to see a formula and address it, and playing out that formula correctly and being approved that they can, and not even creating a new formula with playing by the right rules, not even be able to teach it. All this ego did, this Dave ego, what he did was he sat there and he said, well, you're dumb. You can't even read these articles, which is not wrong. Like, I couldn't read these articles, and the reason why is because experts know how to. I mean, this is an expert field. I'm counting on them to be the expert, not to have an expert stand up there and be like, and by the way, you're stupid, you can't read this article. Well, what the hell did you become an expert for? That was the other thing. He cussed the whole time. Throughout the whole, the ego cussed throughout the whole debate, and he was never called out on it by the moderator. Never once. And instead of being an expert who said, let me explain this to you, let me write this out on the board, like, fine, let's just go ahead and have an honest debate here. It was, oh, you're calling me a liar. Oh, you're calling them a liar. Oh, you know what? You're a liar. It just opened my eyes to, it's not just happening in society as a whole, like at least from what we can see in culture. This is happening in the science too. Whatever dishonest conversations are being had, and the type of trickery that's being used in culture, the same thing's happening in science, where egos are puffing up, and it's no real debates happening about truth. That's long gone. So I'm thinking that as far as science goes, especially in certain fields like this, where they have to create a wall like the ego does, Dave, the ego, he has to create a wall, because you can even hear it with the way he speaks about God. There's something in him that rises up and just gets so angry that he even has to address it. It's almost like a manifestation. You can see it in his face. it's supernatural. Like, this dude hates God, and he's not really there debating James Torr. He's there making a case that God is not real, and therefore he can be as much of a jerk as he is, as he wants to be, wherever he wishes to be. And nobody even has to tell him he's a jerk or he's a liar or not a liar, but rude or an ego. He is all these things, and he probably patted his own self on the back for this. This is where we're at. Like, even in the comment section, there are people who are embarrassed by the university for doing this, for sincere. And then there are other people who are like, oh, well, that was ballsy. Really? To get up on a stage and do something like that? You could do that in the kitchen. I've done this before to people. It doesn't take a smart person to do it. That's my point. It was really horrible. Anyway, this is Linda of Christ is King Forever. My point is the observation of what type of person Dave the Ego is, to do something like that. I don't really know, but he kind of revealed something about himself that's very strange and scary. And what kind of people the university had to be to do that to their professor. And there's something really deep and dark happening in science that is really strange. And I'm for Torr. I think Torr was correct. I think Torr is making an honest search, and you can tell with the precision that he spoke with. He wanted to speak numbers and facts, and he was willing to sit and listen. And even though he did speak over a few times, but he spoke over when his time was, it was his time to speak. It was just a fascinating thing to watch, not so much what they were saying, but how messed up things are right now in universities. This is Linda of Christ is King Forever. May God be with you.